Imagine two cities, each with their own philosophy on education. In one city, a father walks his son to school to be trained by state-funded educators, while in the other city, another father leaves his son at home to be instructed by private tutors. Both men think their children are getting the best education possible for the time, but which is truly better, private or public? Or to put it in contemporary language, public school versus homeschool. We all have an opinion on this. I know I do. But here's the thing. The scene I described didn't happen in 2026. It happened in 480 BC. Welcome to Living Words Press. You've stumbled on the place where stories and faith meet. Join me, Zach Larson, to talk about writing, stories, and how we can all draw closer to God. Part entertainment, part education. But before we get back to the story, I want to remind you that I'm an author of clean fantasy, science fiction, and Christian novels. My latest book, The Vitality Code, is on sale now. You can get it on Kindle Unlimited, you can get an ebook, you can do a hardcover, or a paperback. It's an awesome biotech thriller. It has giant illegal fighting robots. It has a bioethic scientist who's looking for a way to take the vitality or the health of animals and transfer that to sick humans and cure their diseases. But as he's doing that, he realizes that the repercussions of his research go far beyond what he expected. And then he ends up trying to run away from the very company he's been working for because he doesn't want his research used in the wrong way. It's an awesome book. I'm hoping to get an audiobook done soon, but if you go check it out on Amazon, get a copy and read it and give me some reviews. You can see it's newer, but it still needs some reviews. But trust me, this is my fifth book, my third one published right now. It is a really good story. People who've read it so far have told me it could be a movie. Like, it's got good Christian themes, it's got really thought-provoking narrative, and giant fighting robots. How can you go wrong? So, go check it out on Amazon. It's called The Vitality Code. Just type in The Vitality Code, Zach Larson, and you'll get right to it, and you can buy it in the format that you choose. Then after you've done that, don't forget that all of my posts go yes to my Substack, which is what I'm reading from, but also I send everything and more to my newsletter at kit.com. So living-words-press-newsletter.kit.com. You can join there, and there's a lot of things that I'm planning on to give out over there. Just follow the link. I'm going to have it in the description. You can follow that, or you can go to my website and check it out, livingwordspress.com. And it also has links to the newsletter, so don't forget to go there. All right, now back to dive in to the living words. Athens and Sparta were only 132 miles apart, but that distance felt much larger when you had to travel it by foot or by horse. That divide was large enough to allow each polis or city-state to adhere to custom philosophies on education. In Athens, education focused on intellectual development and more liberal subjects like public speaking or the arts. Sparta, on the other hand, emphasized military training, obedience, and physical endurance. Obviously, our debate about how best to educate children has been raging for a lot longer than we thought. It comes and goes. Sorry about the car. It comes and goes, ebbs and flows, with changing customs and advancing knowledge. But that makes me wonder, what aspects of society or culture lend themselves to one philosophy of education or another? Why does it seem like Americans are shifting over to the homeschooling side more heavily now than in the past, say, 200 years? What pushed us to trust public education for as long as we have? As a public educator myself and a father, I want to know. I'm sure the answer is nuanced, and I know it is. It's multifaceted. But today we're going to look for some explanations in ancient Greece. I'm not going to go into all of the extra nuances. Yes, I know that they're there. I had a comment on my Substack already about how education has deteriorated in the last 10 years and is not putting out as many people that know civics and government and education as it has in the past. I get that, but it's not necessarily that it's not being taught, which I know in some schools it is not being taught well, but I'm an educator, my wife is an educator. we know the education environment. So I do know that in some places it is being taught, all the things that have always been taught classically, and it's being taught well, but it's not being retained because students just don't care. I know that's hard to hear. It comes from home environments. Now you're going to say mine does, but do they really? And I don't want to point fingers at anyone, but do your students, your kids really care? Have you fostered a culture of respect and need for knowledge? Because if you haven't, then they are being apathetic. I'm an educator in the classroom. I've seen it. Even kids from really good families, if there is not a focus on education and learning and the need to better yourself and show respect to those that are helping you, then they're apathetic. Okay? It really does need to be accentuated for it to happen because they just aren't retaining it. I see it taught and I see it forgotten. The education environment, public education, is not perfect. I 100% agree with you on that. But it's also, at least in areas like mine, it's also not this terrible thing as people make it out to be. Okay? So just keep that in mind. I'm not hitting every single nuance of this right now, but we are just looking at ancient Greece to find some explanations and just to consider some things. All right, so back to it. To understand the origin of the different schools of thought, pun intended, it is instructive to consider what each of these societies valued, because from thence comes their culture and goals. Athens. What Athens wanted, what they really, really wanted, was well-rounded citizens who would participate in democratic and civil life. The Athenian model of education was guided by the concept of paideia. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Which meant more than just schooling. It referred to the full development of the ideal citizen, morally upright, intellectually capable, physically fit, and artistically literate. This included even things like memorizing all 27,000 lines of the Iliad and the Odyssey. When you realize that Athens is the foundation for modern democracy, which involves public speaking, logical reasoning, and formal debate, you can begin to understand their headspace. They were less worried about war and more concerned with ideas. I mean, heck, both Socrates and Plato were native Athenians. Is it any wonder that their education focused on civic mindedness? Now, Sparta. If Athenians were the talkers and thinkers, Spartans were the silent doers. Instead of small schools or private tutors, Spartan boys left their families at age 7 to enter the agoge. Once again, don't know if I'm saying them right. Probably not. State-run military training camps. Reading and writing were minimal, and even speech was trained for brevity and impact. Talk about your strong silent type, eh? I mean, seriously, these guys went from a group of villages in the valley of the Evrotus River in Laconia to become the most prominent land military power in the Greek world. I mean, when I hear the word Spartan, I always think of Master Chief from the Halo franchise. But I know most people default to the idea of the strong warrior at the very minimum, and then also the movie 300, which is based on an actual group of Spartans who died in battle. I mean, these guys were literally bred for conquest. And we still have these symbols today, the Spartan. So participation in civics or loyalty and training. Although the educational structures of Athens and Sparta feel eerily similar to the divide in America today, they are only similar, they're not the same. Athenian families only educated boys for participation in the greater society and trained girls for domestic work. Even then, what education there was to be had was only available for the wealthy elite. Remember that part about private tutors? On the other hand, Spartan training was available for both boys and girls, but focused solely on physical prowess. Neither system's perfect, and both contain a mix of modern homeschooling and public school elements. So why does this matter? Because the stories of the past dictate our present and our future. Let us first consider how the ideals of Sparta are represented in the American educational philosophy today. Remember, Sparta is state-run schools. Sparta wanted loyal, obedient citizens, so they brought the children all together and trained them all in the exact same way, in the exact same skills. The children were taught what was needed to function in the Spartan society and to love that society. Without that ingrained love and loyalty, their military force would not have been as strong as it was. You can't have a strong military force without loyalty to state or country. It just doesn't happen. Our public schools have espoused many of these same goals for the last 70-ish years. The state brings children together to be educated about the same things in the same way. We have entire curricula about American government, history, literature, and society. The state wants loyal citizens, but can you blame them? When citizens begin to hate or fight their heritage, you get America 2026. Every country needs a sense of patriotism to hold together and function, and that's not a bad thing. It is okay, and I dare say good, to feel a sense of pride and belonging to your country and community. We still talk about Sparta today because of this very ideal. America is a thing because of this ideal. Our country needs more of that right now. However, American schools also have a lot of Athens in them. I would know, having taught high school English for 10 years. Our kids have been taught high levels of reading, speech, argument, arts, science, and civic duty. It is not necessarily individualized, but American education does value at least some level of paideia. Here's where I might ruffle some feathers. Homeschooling does have a lot of Athens to it, but not necessarily all of the good parts. Yes, homeschooling can produce excellent adults, and there are definitely situations where homeschooling is the better option. And there are definitely lots of schools throughout the country or places throughout the country where I would not have my kids in the public schools because I've heard what's going on there. But homeschooling is a lot more like that exclusive private tutor from Athens than we like to think. Homeschooling is by and large a thing of the wealthy elite. I know that there are outliers, but that's not the norm. That is the outlier. If you think about it, the people that can afford to have tutors or even one parent stay home, they have more money. They're in the upper classes or at least middle class. Okay? So it is the wealthy elite, and we're Americans. We're already in the wealthy elite. I'm not saying that pridefully. I'm just saying we have an abundance here. And the recent World Cup showed us that. We have an abundance. We should be grateful for what we have. But even within our society, it's by and large the wealthy elite. So just ask yourself the question, who can afford to have a parent not work or to hire tutors? The people that are well off. Okay? Or people that are very, very dedicated. And I know some of those. I've heard of some of those. But still, it is the minority. Okay? Curriculum is expensive and time intensive. Books are expensive. To homeschool right, it is not cheap or easy. It is not cheap or easy to do any schooling right, let me tell you. Then there's the trend of unschooling. These are homeschool methods where kids are outside doing instead of inside studying. They work and play and build physical capabilities. Which Greek polis does that sound more like? Athens or Sparta? Hint, it's Sparta. At the end of the day, I don't hate homeschooling or put public school on a pedestal. Both have their merits and their flaws. I just wanted to point out some of the connections I found between this ancient feud and the issues of today. What we really need to learn from Athens and Sparta is not to be so focused on our own plans that we are blind to other possibilities. Complete obedience and loyalty without individual thought is a recipe for mindless brutes. A focus on rhetoric and persuasion over truth creates a people who think hard words are violence. Once again, sounds a lot like America 2026. Public schools are not inherently evil. Homeschooling is not a miracle solution. I don't know what the ultimate solution to our educational rift will be, but I know that it's got to be some sort of combination and change, but also taking some of what works. We are in an era of crisis, and the things we do right now will determine what kind of world we live in tomorrow. Are you still waiting for my post to come out on Substack? Well, or YouTube? Don't forget to go to my newsletter at Kit. You can see links here on my Substack, but really Kit is where I'm going to be sending out most of the stuff. So go there, go to my website, and go please check out the Vitality Code. Like if you're thinking about Spartan fighters, listen, I have a giant illegal robot that is modeled after a samurai. All right, it has a big katana. It's named Oni. Like it's awesome. And there are lots of other fighting robots. I have one named after Rendell, like Rendell's monster. It's awesome. Okay, cool things in that book. Go check it out. I know you're gonna love it because it's a science fiction, but listen, I'm a fantasy writer at heart. It's going to have a fantasy feel to it, even though it's like really hard science. I don't go into any crazy things like even nanobots or anything like that. Okay. And you're going to see some reflections of things that are going on right now, but I know you're going to like it. So go check that out and think about our education system. Don't think about it as, oh, the teachers are terrible and all public education is terrible. Don't think about it as, well, homeschooling is not going to work either. Okay? Different situations. And I think that's been our problem for a really long time, is that we've thought, wow, there's only one way to do this and there's got to be only one solution. That's not true. That's one of the big problems I see with public education right now, is that we think, well, just because they are 14 years old, they're all going to be together in the class. Or we have so many of them that they're just all learning the exact same thing. That's one of the problems. And we have to be a little bit more fluid and adaptable. But we shouldn't also throw out the baby with the bathwater. We can't throw out all of the classical things that we know work and have worked for a long time to produce an amazing country with amazing people. So, no, don't just take one side over the other. Let's think about this with more nuance and more charity and a little more faith. All right. This is Zach signing off. I'll see you next time.